Yeah, so this is a new sugya. Today's Amud is Daf Tes Vav Amud Aleph. And we're up to the last line, or the second to last line of Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. And that's a new sugya. What's the sugya? What are we talking about? So we know that Lava Nitik Lasei, there's Machlokes Tanoim, whether Lava Nitik Lasei gets Malkus or not. The halacha, it follows the opinion. Shit to Rabbi Huda, I think. No, Tanakh, I can't remember which way around. Yeah, the lava nitila say ain't like all of that. Lava nitila say you don't get malchus for lava nitila say. The question is what exactly falls into the category of lava nitila say. So simply speaking, we understand what lava nitila say means. You have a lav, don't steal, don't do noiser, and there's an assay which comes after the lav. That if you do the lav, so then there's a way. There's something the Torah tells you to do. Don't steal. If you steal, you need to return. So therefore, that's considered lav anitla. The Torah is telling you there's a way of fixing up the lav, and therefore you don't get malchus for the lav because if you have a way of fixing it up. So even if you don't do the hashiv, right? Even lav anitla is not only if you do the assay you don't get the malchus, but because the lav is nitik assay, because the lav can be corrected by the assay, has an assay which comes later, so you don't get malchus. So now the question is, what about what's called the lois assay shekadmu assay? It's a lois assay which has an assay linked to it, but it's not an assay which can only be done after the lav. It could also be done before. Yeah, let's see inside. We'll see an example in a minute. Yeah, or more than one example. Rabbi Bachana said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, "Kol loisas shekadmu asay loikanol." Any loisas which has an assay linked to it, but kadmu asay, the assay could be done even before transgressing the loisasa. So then loikanol, you get malchus. You get malchus. What's the let's see Rashi. Yeah, let's do Rashi just to. Kol loisas shekadmu asay loikanol. Ha'asal ashmi'in, Rabbi Yochanan is coming to tell me it didn't like this. Rabbi Bachana in the name of Rabbi Yochanan is telling you like this. Even according to Mandam who says a lava nitik lasei, a lava which can be connected to asay in a way that the asay fixes it up and it comes after lava ain't loikanol. Kitani loisui siru van noisa tisrafu, but tisrafu ba'kas with nasei chaloisas. We learned in the Bryce when you get to noisa, you're not allowed to leave over karbanis till the morning. But if you do, then you have to burn it. So we say that the reason the Torah is telling you to burn it, or the reason that what's going on over here is that the Torah comes and says, do something after transgressing, after being over the loisasa, it's coming to tell you there's no malchus. What's pshat? He explains a little bit of the lamdas of it, of the havana, of the understanding behind it, is because the Torah connects the asay to be the oynish of the lav, the way of fixing it up. Don't do this, and if you do this, this is how you can get yourself out of it. If you steal, give it back. If you leave noisar till the morning, go burn it. So it's a way. This is the oynish. This is the way of fixing it up. So there's no malchus. This only applies to that say which comes after lav. You can only be mekayim it after going, being over the lav. If you have an assay which precedes the lav, it's tightly connected. It's talking about the same subject, but it can be done before the lav. In other words, let's say it's hard to give an example because the examples which the Gemara is going to give soon are examples, and we see some of them you do get malchus, or you don't get malchus. So, but what one example? Okay, we can say now already. Yeah, why not? It says below yitamu es machneim, right? A tame person is not allowed to be mitama. The man is not allowed to stay in the. He's not allowed to go into the. He's not allowed to go into the machne shchina, depending on his tumah. He's not allowed to go into the. Let's say he's not allowed to go into the Beis Hamikdash. If he was in the Beis Hamikdash, then he has to go out. So there's an assay of yishalku min hamachne kol seruv kol zav kol tamei, and there's v'lo yitamu es machneim is the lav. The Maisa, the assay is not only once you transgress the lav. The assay is straight away b'shalkum in machna. Even if you don't go and do the lav of going into the machna when you shouldn't have, you also go out.
The mitzvah to send out the
right. That's the assay. B'shalkum in machna called tzruva called zav. Means you're not allowed to be there. But there's two ways the Torah tells you you're not allowed to be there. One is b'shalkum in machna mitzvah assay, and one is mitzvah lois assay. So do we say that because the assay could be done after the lois assay as well as before, it's considered lava nitik assay? Or do we say no? That's not called a lava nitik assay. Lava nitik assay is only when the assay can be done only after the lav. So that's really what Rabbi Yochanan is saying. Called lois assay, called ma'aseh loikinol. So that's
Or it's not totally to lava nitik assay or not.
There's no. We'll see. Rabbi Yochanan was chayzer from this then, but that's the halacha. The lois assay, called ma'aseh is taka yeloikin. It's not considered lava nitigla say. Lava nitigla say is when the Torah tells you don't do something. If you transgress, if you're over and you went and did what you weren't supposed to do, you have a way of fixing it. Then there's no malchus. So this is what Rabbi Bachani said in the Rabbi Yechon. Amrulai means stam. Other people said to him, meaning when they heard in the name of Rabbi, when they heard from Rabbi Bachana, this is Rabbi Yechon said, they found it hard to believe, I guess, that Rabbi Yechon said such a thing. So they went to Rabbi Yechon and said, Amrus, did you really say this? Amaluhu loy. He said no. Now, Pshat no doesn't mean that he denied and he said no, even though he did. It means to say I was choizer. In other words, practically speaking, no. But Rashi says chozer. So Amar Rabba said, what do you mean? Kim or yeah, Amra. For sure you said it. Or Kisiva v'tanina, and there's a pasuk which talks about it, and there's a Mishnah. What's Pshat? Kisiva, we find in the pasuk, Vishalchu min amachna. The pasuk says Vishalchu min amachna kol tzur v'kol zav. And the pasuk also says V'lo yitamas machneim. So this is mamish a classical example of lav shekadmoi aseh. You have a lav of you're not allowed to go into the machna when you tame, and then you have an aseh Vishalchu min amachna. But the Vishalchu min amachna could be done even before being over the lav. If you found in the machna, so then you have to go out, even if you haven't done anything wrong by going into the machna when you shouldn't have. And Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah, the pasuk itself doesn't tell me that you get Malchus, but the verb, it's not like a regular Ksiva with Tanina. In other places, you have Ksiva with Tanina. What we're saying is there's a Makkos in the pasuk, this is the case, and there's a Makkos in the Mishnah. That's not what we're saying over it. Ksiva Tanina means we learned in the pasuk, we learned something in the pasuk. In other words, we learned that there's a musk of Lav Shekadmo Asay. With Tanina, we learned in the Mishnah that there's Taka Malchus, Habala Mikdash Tami. Our Mishnah, this is connection to Elon Aloikin. Yeah, our Mishnah says Habala Mikdash Tami gets Malchus, even though it's a Lav Shekadmo Asay. So this is the kasha the Rabbi is asking Rabbi Yochanan. First of all, you said it. Why were you chayzer? And then second of all, why were you chayzer if the Mishnah says befeirish that you get malchus for lav shekad maaseh, right? Mishnah says the abal mikdash tummy gets malchus. So Taka Rabbi Yochanan is going to have to deal with this kasha and the Mishnah. The Rishonim talk about it. Maybe we'll rest in a minute. But for the moment, the Gemara's kasha is my time of Kadabay. Why Taka was Rabbi Yochanan chayzer from it? If Taka, it seems that the din is a din we find in the Mishnah. Why Taka was Rabbi Yochanan chayzer from this klal the lav shekad moaseh is loikin, and now he's saying ain loikin. Why is he considered a lav nitig laseh? The Gemara says mishum dekasha le oinus. You had the kasha the case of oinus. Oinus was someone who's ma'anas a girl. The pasuk says two things. V'lo yisir leisha tachas hashe'ino is a mitzvah to marry her if she is interested. Lo yuchel l'shalchu kol yomav, and you can't divorce her. You're not allowed to divorce her. You have to stay married. So the Brayta says that. So this is also lav shekad moaseh b'pashtus, yeah. Because the pasuk saying go marry her, and don't divorce. Now, if you do divorce, you still have the mitzvah of remarrying her. But the loisiyah leisha could be done before as well, not just after. It's not just the lav anitil asay. Loisiyah leisha is saying go marry, so it's a lav shekad masay. And we learned in the Brayta, you learned in the Brayta, you don't get malchus. This is an example where you don't get malchus. What we learn in the Brayta, the Brayta says as follows: oinus shagirish. If someone was ma'anas and then he married the girl and then he divorced her, im Yisraelu, if he's a yid, which is muta bigrusha, so machziv ein eloika, he remarries and doesn't get malchus. This is really the kasha, yeah. We see that from the fact that he could fix it up, says ein eloika im koyenu, but if he's a koyen and therefore once he divorces he can't be mekayim in the midst of loisiyah leisha anyway. There's no way of fixing it up. There's no so the loika ve'ein machziv. Then he gets malchus and he's not allowed to return it because the kohen is not allowed to marry a grusha. So the Gemara straight away asks, Im Yisraelu machziv ein eloika. Let's look at the first half of the Brayta, which says that if he's a yid, he remarries her, but he doesn't get malchus. Why does he not get malchus? Loisas shekad masehu. It's a loisas shekad maseh v'lilki. He should be able to get malchus either way. Why are you treating it like a lav anything that's saying that he doesn't get malchus and he has to be maxer and he doesn't get malchus? The mitzvah of loisiyah leisha isn't uniquely. It's not only after he divorces her; it's even before he has to marry her. He taka went and married her, then he divorced her, and now you're telling me that he doesn't get malchus because he's got an option of fixing it up through mekayim naseh of loisiyah leisha, which the kohen doesn't have, and that's why there's no malchus. So that's right. So that's why Rabbi Yochanan was chayzer. That's taka why Rabbi Yochanan was chayzer, because of oinus the Brayta. Now you have to deal with the kasha that the Mishnah says otherwise. You've got two cases. Why was he chayzer? Just because he found a Brayta which says oinus shagirish the ein eloika. The Mishnah says tamei shaba el amigdash is yeloika. So the Rishonim explain that they differentiate between the two cases. They say tamei abal tamei oinus shagirish is he's fixing up the aveira. What was the aveira? The aveira is The woman shouldn't be bizayin, I guess, right? He was ma'anas her, so she shouldn't be bizayin. No one would want to marry her, right? So he goes and marries her. So if he divorces her and he remarries her, he's fixing up a bizayin. He's fixing up the bizayin that he did by divorcing her. He's fixing it up somewhat. Masha enkin abola migdash tameh. You already were metame. So the fact that you're going out now, you're not fixing up what you did to her. Yeah, episode. That's what some of the Rishonim explain to make a difference, to be miyash of the shitta of Rabbi Yochanan. But either way, Rabbi Yochanan holds that at least sometimes lo yisas shekadma say we're going to not get malchus, and that's why he was chayzer from the general rule that lo yisas shekadma say loikin. He says no because Oinus tells me otherwise. But now Allah is going to take an answer and say that no, Allah, that no, the meaning that Oinus is nishkin kashan. The Oinus doesn't contradict Rabbi Yochanan's original ruling. Rabbi Yochanan was chayzer because of Oinus, but there's no reason to. All is basically saying, no, I hold like Rabbi Yochanan's original ruling and don't ask a kasha from Oinus because Oinus is different. Why is Oinus different? So here it's a long Hamshcha Gemara with many different options, but the nekuda of the answer, what all is saying is, at least at the beginning of the sugya, is even at the end, 1 second. Yeah, at least at the beginning of the sugya, basically all is trying different things, where he's saying that by Oinus, the pasuk of Lo Yisiyah Le'isha was redundant, it was miyutar, it was extra, because you didn't need to tell me Lo Yisiyah Le'isha for the regular case. The only thing Lo Yisiyah Le'isha is coming to tell me that if you divorce her, then you have a special mitzvah now of remarrying, even though that's not pasuk pshat in the pasuk. So let's see, all the Lo Yomer Lo Yisiyah Le'isha, this is pshat. The pasuk didn't need to say Lo Yisiyah Le'isha but Oinus. Why not? Why is the pasuk of Lo Yisiyah Le'isha not necessary to be said by Oinus? Because v'ligma mi we can learn out of moitzi shamra. Moitzi shamra is exactly the same thing. The pasuk says over there, the nasnu lavi anar ki hoitzi shem ra b'sulas Yisrael v'lo Yisiyah Le'isha lo yuchal l'shachal kol yom. Yeah, the same pasuk, minus the words tachas hasheina because it wasn't ma'ana, it was moitzi shamra, it wasn't an Oinus. Yeah, so but the same mitzvahs apply. The lo Yisiyah Le'isha, you moitzi shamra on your wife. You need to marry her. You need to stay married to her. That's what Lo Yisiyah Le'isha means. And Lo Yuchal L'Shachal Kol Yom, you're not allowed to divorce her. And Asin Lo Yisaseh. So the Gemara is going to say like this: the Veligma mi Moitzi Shamra. We should learn the din of Oinus from Moitzi Shamra with a Kal V'Chomer. Now Moitzi Shamra shelo yasa ma'isa Rachmana Lo Yisiyah Le'isha. If already by Moitzi Shamra, where he didn't do a ma'isa against his wife, he did a dibur against his wife. He spoke badly. He made a lie about his wife that she was mezana in Erisin, which wasn't true. There's no ma'isa. The Torah says he needs to stay married to her. There's a mitzvah say to be married to her. Oinus lo kolshkein, isn't the Kal V'Chomer that by Oinus is for sure apply? Lama nema, either you go lama nema or not, but the pshat is the same. Lama nema, why taka then does it say v'lo yisiyah le'isha by Oinus if it could be learned out of moitzi shamra? So we're saying in the fun of playing in la'acha. You don't need it for the fun of to tell you that you should that the ma'anas has to marry the person who he was ma'anas. Because we can learn that out of Moitzi Shamra. It must be Tneo Inyan La'achov to tell me there's a mitzvah assay to do so even after divorcing her. She'im Girish Yachzeh. That if he divorces her, he has to remarry her. And therefore, it's allowed anything I say because the possibility isn't necessary for the before. That can be learned from Moitzi Shamra. The only thing that the pasuk is needed for is for after divorcing her. And therefore, it's a bona fide, it's a lav anything I say lemahadrin. And that's taka why Oinus is a case where you don't get malchus. Right, so we had a catch from Oinus that L'chura Oinus is a lav shekal saying you don't get malchus, and that's where Rabbi Yochanan was chayzer from his original din that you do get malchus. Zokt all that's not true. It's a lav anitil say because the pasuk Lo Yisiyah Le'isha is not talking about before he divorces; it's only talking about after divorces, And therefore it's a mamash lav anitil say. That's stage number 1. Freddy Gemara Akasha, what do you mean? It's not true. You can't learn Oinus from Moitzi Shamra and say Lo Yisiyah Le'isha is for afterwards. The etzem din of getting married, that the ma'anas has to marry the girl, can't be learned out of Moitzi Shamra. Cannot be learned out of Moitzi Shamra. Why can't it be learned out of Moitzi Shamra? The ikil mifrach ma'ala Moitzi Shamra shekein lo ikil mashale. We see Moitzi Shamra as other chumras. Moitzi Shamra is malchus and mammon. Usually there's a klal kadei rishas, so we don't give malchus and mammon. Moitzi Shamra is a unique case where you get both malchus and money. You both chayiv malchus and you chayiv to pay money, and therefore you can't learn out from Moitzi Shamra. The fact that there's a mitzvah of Lo Yisiyah Le'isha by Moitzi Shamra, don't learn to Kal V'Chomer to Oinus, because Oinus is a ma'isa. Moitzi Shamra has other chumras which show me that Moitzi Shamra can be treated more strictly, and therefore don't learn to Oinus. So therefore the Gemara is chayzer from that. Try number 1 of Ola, suggestion number 1 of Ola. Another reason why Lo Yisiyah Le'isha, why ma'anas is allowed anything I say. What's pshat? Ella, so taka we need Lo Yisiyah Le'isha by Oinus, and the Lo Yisiyah Le'isha by Oinus is taka lav shekad maseh. And were it for the loisi leisha ba'oinus, you would the lo yuchel l'shalchol kol yamav is not allowed anything like that. And your taka would get malchus. Why taka you're not getting malchus by oinus? For a different reason. Because elo lo yoima loisi leisha b'moitzi shemra. The other way round. You don't need to tell me the pasuk of loisi leisha by moitzi shemra. Because we lig memory oinus, we can learn moitzi shemra out of oinus. Ma oinus she'ein loike mishal mam rachman of loisi leisha. If ready oinus. Where oinus is more cow compared to moitzi shemra. You don't get, there's no double punishment of malchus and money, and nevertheless the pasuk says he needs to marry the person he was ma'anas. Moitzi shemra, where there is like a mashal, which is more chamor. Loik koshkin is another kal v'chomer that you need to get married to stay married, shall we say, yeah, to the woman who he was moitzi shemra about. The lama nema, why taka was it said? What was it said? It wasn't needed. You could learn it from oinus. Elamai, what we're going to say, this is Ulla number 2, yeah, Ulla's second suggestion of how to be miyash of the kasha of oinus. Why oinus is considered lava nitila says. He says like this: you can't, if it doesn't have any reason to be said by moiti shamra today, in oinus say that the loisila isha moiti shamra is coming to teach me something about oinus. Now the only problem is that oinus has its own mitzvah of loisila isha. So mainly in lefanav, if you can't use it for oinus lefanav, the regular thing that you have to go marry the woman who ma'anas because the pasuk already says that. So the loisila isha moiti shamra is taneu inyan la'achav should be used for after, meaning after the ma'anas divorces the woman, and we're saying that he has to remarry her. That's the loisila isha moiti shamra is coming to tell me that, and therefore it's almost as if ma'anas has 2 mitzvahs assay. One before, which allows shekadma assay, which the assay is koydem halav, shall we say? And then there's another assay, the veloisila isha moiti shamra is a special assay to tell me that the ma'anas who divorces his wife has to remarry her, and it comes out that it's got a new assay, which is a lavanitid assay. It's only afterwards, and it's a lavanitid assay, and that's why there's no malchus.
No, it's the same order.
The same Ola tried one thing. We asked the kasha. Oh, Gama Moiti Shamra. Okay. Okay, so where are we up to? I think so if now the Gemara says, Moiti Shamra mi oinus nami loy gama. It's not true. You can't learn Moiti Shamra from oinus. The ikela mifrak mala oinus shekein asa maisa. Right? Oinus is more common. Maybe only then loisila isha should apply. You can't tell me that you don't need the pasuk by moiti shamra and therefore use it for oinus la'achra because you need it for moiti shamra itself, because you can't do moiti shamra from oinus because mala oinus shekein al samaisa. Okay, so we slugged it up. So just to halt cup over here, I'm going to pause for a moment and just go over what we said till now. All has suggested 2 options, 2 explanations of why someone who's ma'anas his wife and he's Yisrael, and then he marries her, and he divorces her, he doesn't get malchus for divorcing her, despite the fact he was over on the lav of lo yuchel l'shalchol kol yamav, because it's a lav anitik la'aseh. Now, l'chora, it's not a lav anitik la'aseh; it's a lav shekod ma'aseh. The aseh of a loisila isha is something that he could done, which he has to do before divorcing her as well, right? He has to. In fact, you can only do it before divorcing them, right? You can only divorce someone if you're first married to them. So therefore, there should be malchus based on Rabbi Yochanan's original din. So all is trying to be miyash Rabbi Yochanan's original din. So he trial number 1. The first thing that all said was like this: that oinus, the loisila isha of oinus is not. It can't be talking about lifnei before divorcing her, because it could be learned from moitzi shemra. Could be learned from moitzi shemra, the kal v'chomer. Let's not get into the details of the kal v'chomer now. We slugged it up by saying there's no kal v'chomer. So then we said, okay, so we're back to our original question. So what's pshat? So we say like this, no, the other way around. The loisila isha moitzi shamra is unnecessary. The loisila isha moitzi shamra is not necessary because we can learn out of a kal v'chomer from oinus. Elomai, why is the pasuk telling me? So then we do it inyan. It's not can't be used out for moitzi shamra. It should be used for oinus, and it can't be used for oinus itself because of the loisila isha by oinus, by the regular oinus. It must be la'achrav. After he divorces a special mitzvah and it comes out as a lava nittilasa. And then we ask, but there's no kal v'chomer ikila mifrach. We can slug up that kal v'chomer as well, right? So now Ella, third option in Ola, a third thing that Ola is going to say on the same lines is as follows: Ella lo yoyme loisila isha b'moitzi shemer shari ishte. Another reason why loisila isha b'moitzi shemer is not necessary. Pasha, what's the moitzi shemer? What's the case of moitzi shemer? The case of moitzi shemer is he's married to the woman and he's saying a story that she was mazana and therefore she's chayiv skila or whatever, chayiv misa. And so we say after he found out that his lie was, we found out that he was lying. There's loisila isha, but loisila isha, what does that mean? Loisila isha means go marry her. He's already married to her. So the lashon loisiyah leisha is not masim. It's not necessary to tell me by the Moitzi Shemra that you should stay married. He's already married, right? Sorry, because the mitzvah is to stay married to him. But maybe the word is that the lashon of loisiyah leisha. I didn't look into it, but it could be. That's what you said. Okay, but there's lots of things where you have an asay and a loisas telling you the same thing. I don't know if that's the. No, I hear what you're saying. The loisiyah leisha means go marry her, basically. I think that's pshat. The loisiyah, I need a double check. But he's already mimikadisha. Right? He just says shekvar kitchav and this. He doesn't explain the take of a kat what's Mr. Kash. I think the word is the lashon of loisiyah leisha is go marry her. He's already married her. So by oinus, it makes sense. The lashon loisiyah leisha. By Moshe Shemer, it doesn't make sense the whole lashon. So he says like this. What's needed for? Taka can't be talking about Moitzi Shemra because it doesn't make any sense. Therefore, use it out for oinus. Now, you can't be talking about the regular oinus, go marry her, because there's a possible loisiyah by oinus itself. The main in the fun because there's a possible loisiyah by oinus itself. Today, in the Achrav say that this possible Moitzi Shemra is coming to tell me the Achrav that if he already divorced her, he needs to remarry her, and therefore there's another assay, and it's a lav anitig assay. Taka, there's two loisiyah by oinus. It's the same thing that we said earlier, just the different nature of how we get there. Yeah, there's a loisiyah leisha before, after being ma'anas, he needs to marry her, and then there's a loisiyah leisha which is said by Moitzi Shema, which isn't needed for Moitzi Shema, which we use out for. Why is it not needed for Moitzi Shema for a different reason than before? Because he's already married to her, so loisiyah leisha doesn't make any sense. Therefore, we say loisiyah leisha is coming to tell you that after the oinus, the ma'anas divorces, he has to remarry, and it's allowed and it's lasay, and that's why there's no malchus. Right? The Gemara asks strong, obvious question. Ve'ema, why are you using it for oinus? In the fun of the Moitzi Shema today, in the Achrav today. Very posh. The Gemara is asking now that you're telling me that the reason why it says v'lo yisiyah leisha by Moitzi Shemra is for oinus and it's not needed for Moitzi Shemra. But you're right, it's not needed for Moitzi Shemra to stay married because he's already married, and the pasuk says v'lo yisiyah leisha to marry her. But maybe the v'lo yisiyah leisha is coming to tell you there's a mitzvah assay that if he gets divorced, then he has to remarry her. So then it's not spare for oinus, and once it's not spare for oinus, so then oinus is vital avshekadma say not alav anitig say because you only have one loisiyah issue, which is talking about in the first place, and it's talking before and after. It doesn't. So it's not a special din of la'achrav. So then we're going to be back to our original question. That's what we're asking. In the fun of the Moitzi Shemra, today in la'achrav the day deloy lucky that Moitzi Shemra shouldn't get malchus. That should be alav anitig say. The Gemara says enochanami. You're right. I'm Taka saying that's what's happening. And Moitzi Shemra Taka is a lav anitig say for that reason. But v'osi oinus v'gomamina. I'm going to learn oinus from Moitzi Shemra la'achrav. In other words, just like Moitzi Shemra, there's an assay of loisiyah leisha la'achrav. After divorcing her, he's got a mitzvah assay of loisiyah leisha, which makes the lav anitig say. So too, the same thing should apply to oinus, and we should learn it oinus out of Moitzi Shemra. So the Gemara straight away asks, "But my gamamina." Whichever way you learn now, whether it's a kal v'chomer or whether it's a b'mem matzino, you're just comparing one thing to another. You can schlag up like we said earlier. Mala Moitzi Shemra shekein la'asa ma'isa. Moitzi Shemra is shekein Moitzi Shemra is loy asa ma'isa, and nevertheless you are. It's interesting. You would expect the Gemara to say. I just noticed this now. Mala Moitzi Shemra kein loy kumsha'a. Mala Moitzi Shemra shekein. In other words, why? No, in other words, that why it's a different. It's not Kidduparchinan, right? It's a new one. That's why you did not go. You're right. Even Memasin Ekel Mifrak Ma'ala Moitzi Shemra shekein lo yasa ma'is. Yeah, Ma'ala Moitzi Shemra shekein also yasa ma'is. Meaning that the reason why Moitzi Shemra is a more shvachra lav and there's no malchus for it, it's considered a lav anitig lasei, is because lo yasa ma'is. Masha Enkin by a Ma'anis, when he did do a Ma'isa, then maybe you're not going to apply the same thing that it's going to be considered lav and if I say no, you're going to get malchus. Yeah, but they used it for a different. They are used as a kula, not as a chumrah. There we were saying don't learn oinus out of Moitzi Shemra because Moitzi Shemra was loikel mashalin. That was the chumrah of Moitzi Shemra. The word you have to say over here is that we think we're trying to learn oinus out of Moitzi Shemra. That what? Not that there should not only that there should be an assay, but that there should be considered a lav and nitil assay, and there should be no malchus. That is a kula because there's no malchus. Don't learn that out of Moitzi Shemra. Maybe Moitzi Shemra doesn't get malchus and it's considered lav and nitil assay because she came also ma'isa. Mashenkin over here. To look into this a little bit more. So therefore all three pshatim, yeah, or four pshatim are knocked out, right? Alama Rava, what does Rava Taka say? Kol Yama. Rava's going to say like this: "This Taka mitzvah of loisila isha. The loisila isha is an assay which is koydem nalav. That mitzvah assay of loisila isha doesn't make the lo yuchel l'shalcha kol yama of an oinus alav and assay. But the words kol yama do. What's pshat the words kol yama do? The pasuk could have said lo yuchel l'shalcha. Don't divorce her. What's up is kol yama. Kol yama means to say that even if you did divorce her, don't keep her divorced. You're not allowed to send her in a way that's kol yama. But if you did divorce her, you have to remarry her. It's almost as if the Torah, including lo yuchel l'shalcha, kol yama is telling you lo yuchel l'shalcha, but kol yama ba'amud v'hachse. You're not allowed to divorce in a way that she stays divorced, which implies that you still have a way of fixing it the whole time. But amud v'hachse, you have to go and return her. So too when Rabbi came in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, he said kol yama ba'amud v'hachse. The pshat in the word kol yama, the Kvass could have just said lo yuchel l'shalcha, don't divorce her. That would be enough to know that you're not allowed to divorce her. Kol yama is coming to tell you you're not allowed to divorce in a way that it's forever, which means if you did divorce her, there's a way of fixing it up by you've got a mitzvah's assay of returning it from the words of kol yama. Now the ha'ara which you need to point out over here, which needs to be pointed out, is say over here what's going on? Rabbi Yochanan was the one who was choizer from his din earlier because he considered oinus a lav and the shekad mulasei and doesn't get malchus, and now he's being miyashiv how it's a lav anitik lasei. What's going on? So the some Rishonim learn the one, the taka he went back. There's Rabbi Yochanan first said his din a lav shekad mulasei, his taka gets malchus. Then he was choizer. Why was he choizer? Because he had a kasha from oinus. That the Bryce says oinus doesn't get malchus despite it being lav shekad mulasei. And then who moisav love who mefarigla, he taka this kasha, but then he was miyashiv himself. He answered that no, oinus is different because he says the words kol yamav. So the words kol yama make a new assay, which makes it a lav anitik assay. And taka Rabbi Yochanan goes back to his original din that the regular lav shekad muasay, which is not shaykh which is not a lav anitik assay like this one, taka gets malchus. Okay, let's do Rashi.
Yes. I know this before coming
Okay, so it's the top Rashi on the page, quite a few Rashis. That's Amrullah. What does Amrullah mean? It doesn't say who said. Some people who heard it from him, but didn't hear in his name. In other words, they heard that he said it's Mishmai. They heard it from Rabbi Bachana or whoever. So they asked him, Amr Stava said, did you say this thing? Amr Loi. No. Rashi explains, it doesn't mean literally said no, but rather Chazabay. Or at least that's what he meant to say, even if he said the word Loi. What he means is no, I don't hold over that. It's not true. So then Rabbi said, what do you mean? We have a pasuk which we find the lois shekad maseh, and nevertheless within the Mishnah they get malchus, and it's not considered good enough just to do that say and that way get out of the malchus. Tanina bala mikdash tamik kasher bein alokim. First Mishnah in this parak says that bala mikdash tamik gets malchus despite the fact there's an asay and a lav there. Even after going into the Beis Hamikdash, Issa, you can be Vishalcha, you can carry the mitzvah say Vishalcha. Nevertheless, because the Vishalcha was shaykh before being over the Lav, if you're already in the Beis Hamikdash when you became Tameh, so it's the Rab Shekadmu saying you can't get Malchus. So with this backs up Rabbi Yochanan's original din. So why taka was he choyna? So Moshe Mishum Tekashle Oinus. Nar Basula the Ashkon Belois Sas Shekadmu say. Regular Nar Basula, which we find the Lois Sas Shekadmu say. It says in the pasuk Lois the Isha Lo Yuchal the Shalfa. The Tanya Loshi Kaim Esa'asei Im Gur Shviaksen of Yifta. You learn to the Bride said that what should you do if he was divorced and he was over the lav? Fix it up, and he becomes potter from the market. Al Malav Shniklas Eichash to be seen that it's considered Lav Shniklas. Im Yisrael Ushiachal Kaim Asei Viaksen Max Vena Loika. He returns and he doesn't get Malchus. In Klein shall also be Grusha Loika Vena Max. Just by the way, I have a little particular cash. The mashmas of the Bride said, just by the even if it is considered lav in this last sign, the mashmas of the Bride says mashma a little bit, at least the push is that when does he not get malchus to Yisrael? If he's maxing, if he's not maxer, maxer ve'ein loika. It sounds a little bit like even Rashi even more so. Rashi says im Yisrael sheyachal l'kaim aseviaksen a maxer ve'ein loika. Well, the earlier Rashi, the Tanya lo sheikaim es haseim gir sheviaksen a v'yifta. Sounds a little bit like you're only potter if you mekayim naseh. For sure, that's not pshat. Lavanit lasei, right? Even if you're not meishiv the gzeila shegazal, there's no malchus because of the potential, the fact that you could fix it up with the asay, even if you don't. Anyway, I don't think so. I think you have to say the same thing over here. That max ein loika means you have to be max. But ein loika because you could be max, therefore ein loika. Weiter in the Rashi, Im Klein u'shasa begrusha loike ve'ena v'amai. Im Yisrael u'max ve'ena loike. Why talk if he's a Yisrael? Does he remarry or not get Malchus? Im Yisrael is Rabbi Yochanan. If it's true, Rabbi Yochanan's then haloi sash shekal maseu. So haloi sash shekal maseu. And that's taka why Rabbi Yochanan was chayv. Amar Ola. Ola says no. Hay lav shenit naseu. It's not a lav shekal maseu. It's a lav nit naseu. Why? Di lav in tuki lav asa. Hay I say if this assay is coming to fix up the lav, loy have a mitzvah lemichtave. It wouldn't be necessary to write it. If you're just coming to tell me that then someone who's ma'anis a woman, he has to marry her. Lo yoyme lo tzilish. No need to say lo tzilish. But then we learn out of Moitzi Shamra. The chsiv beinami lo tzilish lo tzilish. The Gemara Taka says it may no inyan, meaning to say after we already said that you can't say that. Rather, it's the other way around. We should learn oinus out of Moitzi Shamra. Should learn Moitzi Shamra from oinus. So then we have a velo tzilish which is spared by Moitzi Shamra. It may no inyan lifnei girushin. This is going on the first Armenian. Okay, it's going before. Armenian in Lifnei Gerushin, right? If the below is not needed for the Lifnei Gerushin, the she said, because that's learned out of Moitzi Shamra. No, in La'achai Gerushin, Lo Mashim, Sholchi, Yaksidana, Vatilo, the issue of Yiftam and Allah. Vakati says the Gemara Kasha, what do you mean? You want to learn our oinus from Moitzi Shamra? It's not true. It's just the mitzvah yeshni in the funnel. It's necessary even for before divorcing her. And it is a lav shekad masay. The Eloi Costa oinus from Moitzi Shamra loigam. If it wasn't written, we taka wouldn't learn oinus from Moitzi Shamra. Hava dana mina. By Moitzi Shamra makes sense that we make it knas that he has to marry her. She came loikim shamet kilos. We see many chumras by Moitzi Shamra that there's Malchus and Mama. Kid sev Yisrael sev antre. So I mean, so is Yisrael and Malchus. Ma oinish she'ena loikas. The Gemara now says that we should learn Moitzi Shamra out of oinus. The second option of all of them. And you have the possibility to see the issue by Moitzi Shamra spare. Learn it out of oinus. What's pshat? For being ma'anas, he doesn't get malchus. The deal with chilas in Rashi is they don't get confused. In other words, we're not talking about if he divorces her. We're talking about for the actual act of oinus of being ma'anas. Somebody you don't get malchus. Nevertheless, we say you have the knas of marrying her. Moitzi Shamra lekolshkin isn't a Moitzi Shamra kavachayma, and therefore the pasuk is superfluous, is extra Moitzi Shamra. The meaning in the fun of shari ba'atzmi pasuk can therefore apply it to oinus, and there's no need to say by oinus in the regular case of oinus because the pasuk the oinus has its own pasuk of loisi leisha. Ba'atzmi pasuk thinks neini na'achra, use it for afterwards. Okay, the Gemara ultimately says it's not a good kavachayma. Fine. So we can't in oinus from Moitzi Shamra, can't in Moitzi Shamra from oinus. Both psukim loisi leisha are necessary both by oinus and Moitzi Shamra. Comes along all the option number three, and says that we don't need the loisi leisha by Moitzi Shamra because shari ishlehu. The loisi leisha sounds like you need to go marry somebody, but by Moitzi Shamra he's already married. Meaning to say, the Gemara wants to say, the ki heichid the Moitzi Shamra loy laki begerishin im hechzer oinus nami loy laki. If you're going to do the kavachayim, it doesn't work, and if you're going to do the b'mematzina, it doesn't work because Moitzi Shamra has a chumra that has a kulasar shekena also mice, and that's why it doesn't get malchus, which you can't apply to oinus. Ela amar Rava. So finally, we said what's taka Rav? What's taka? All was slugged up on all three or four accounts. Yeah, 4 accounts really. That's in 4 different variations of Allah. Ela amar Rava. Had the Tanya by oinus machsavein aloika. That which the Bride says by oinus machsavein aloika. It's not because it's a lav shekad ma'asen reaction has to be chayzer from what he said. It's because Tarmishim Takar lav shenit lasei. Taka is a lav shenit lasei. Why? Taka the veloy sileisha is kadmei lalav. But the words kol yama are unnecessary. Damakra kol yama. Lo yavlein lemichtavel lo yuchel l'shalcha. Could have just said lo yuchel l'shalcha. Why is he telling me the word kol yama? My kol yama. Hachikama lo tahi b'shilucheh kol yama. The pasuk is saying lo yuchel l'shalcha. You're not allowed to divorce a kol yama. She shouldn't be divorced the whole time, and therefore, even if you did divorce her, you can't continue by keeping a divorce, but continuing to keep a divorce. And there's a positive mitzvah to go to be max. The Torah, what's essentially saying is go remarry. It comes out that the assay is after the law. Okay, we'll go a few more lines till the bottom of the of the dot. Okay, one so it's a period. Basically, we've established that lav shekad malasei. Lav shekad malasei is taka loikinola. We had the kasha from oinus. Ola gave 3 possible answers. We slugged them all up, but 4 possible answers really. And Rava said his pshat that the word Kol Yamav tells me that Oinus is be'etzem be'emes alav anitigase. Kol Yamav makes it telling the Torah is telling you don't divorce, and if you did, you can't keep a divorce. You need to make sure that it's not in the open of Kol Yamav. You need to remarry her, and therefore it's like a lav anitigase, and that's why there's no malchus. But were it to be a regular lav shekad maraseh, Yutaka would get malchus, like we see in the Mishnah Babala Mikdash Tameh, and the Ibamis, even Rabbi Yochanan, according to many Rishonim, was chayzer from his chazar. He's chayzer, but because he had a taretz, his kasha, he's chayzer from his chazar.
He never said that he's chayzer, so he could change his mind the first time. He said loy.
So now we go back to the etzem din. The lav shekad maseh is loikin. So just a second. Why is lav anitig say ain't loikin? You know why? How taka do we know the lav anitig say? We learned in Ein Like. Yeah. Why is a lav anitig say an exception? Huh? That's the Hasbara. Okay. That's taka. Now Ahmed over here sounds like there's a. How do you know there's no malchus? Maybe Torah's telling you what to do. Taki, you should burn it. But how do I know there's no malchus? So we had Yud Gimel Amud Beis. It has to be Dumi Delav de Chasima. That was what we said. Yud Gimel Amud Beis. We said Hash da Aslachi Kulanami Dumi Delav de Chasima. Has to be Dumi Delav de Chasima. In the pasuk of Malchus, it says Birak Rasha. You give Malchus. So Smichas, it says Lo Yisachsim Shai B'Disha. We learn from there that any lav that you get Malchus has to be similar to Lo Yisachsim Shai B'Disha. Just like Lo Yisachsim Shai B'Disha is a lav sheyash b'ay ma'isa, for example, and it's also a lav she'eino nitik lasei. So therefore, we learn that any lav she'ein b'ay ma'isa or lav nitik lasei is no Malchus. Right? The Gemara Kasha, the Gemara is going to ask you Kasha now. Lav she'kol lasei is also not going to the lav the chasim. Take a lav nitik lasei. The asay comes after lav, but so what? And if the asay comes before the lav, it's still not like Lo Yisachsim. Right, Lo Yisachsim is Lo Yisachsim Shai B'Disha. But if you have a Lo Yisachsim Shai B'Disha and another mitzvah of unmuzzling it, right? Yeah, if it was muzzled, you have to unmuzzle it. So it would be a lav shekad. That would be a lav shekad maseh, but we don't see that. So that's what Gemara asks. Amir Papa the Rav of Aloy Dam Lav the Chasima, the lav which is kad maseh is not doima. So the lav the Chasima. So Amalei Rav said back to him like this. Mishum de Kaseh Barachman Aseh Yisera Migragara. Because the pasuk says an extra asay migragar. In other words, once the asay is not connected to lav, once the asay is not fixing up the lav, the asay is independent of the lav, then the lav kidakaime. The lav is a lav, and asay is an asay. Just because there's an extra asay, so somehow the lav is weaker. The lav is as less of an einish. It doesn't make any sense. It's still doing it to lav the chasima. The lav is the lav, right? And the Torah is, there's nothing about the lav which is not doing it to loisachim shai b'disha. It's an extra asay that should take away. So the Gemara straight away feels there's something funny with this teretz. Yeah. What's pshat? Lav say the same thing. There's a lav, don't steal. Because the Torah says go return it, so that makes the lav of loisigzul any less or more doimet to loisachsan. So the Gemara says no. Amalei, there is a difference. Amalei ahulin suki lavu das. There's a difference. When the assay is to fix up the lav, so then it's connected to the lav. And once it's connected to the lav is not doing it to Leisachim Shei B'Disha. Leisachim B'Disha don't do something, period. If you do it, you messed up. There's nothing you can do about it. So you get malchus. But if it's a lav where the Torah says don't do it, and then the Torah adds up, you know what, there's a way of fixing it up, so then the lav is not doing it to Leisachim Shei B'Disha. Mashenkin, the lav shekadma assay, the assay is totally independent of the lav and doesn't take away from the lav. Let's see how Rashi explains this. V'aloi dami lavet. There's no right. Who samach lepashas malchus, and we learn all the malchios by lavim from loisachs. Migragara bitmia. Ahulin suki laveyasa. Asi she'ena miskayim elo la'achaver salav, and asi which can only be done after is lenasik esalav me'oinish malchus uba. It's coming to fix up the lav from oinish malchus. Masha'en kain a lav shekad masim. Okay, stop over here. Take a few minute break, and then we'll decide what to do with the review.